This is the Pixel 2 XL, and it's been on the market now for a month, and I've had mine for around about 4 weeks. But there's been so much press around this thing. Some has been very positive, some has been not quite so positive at all. So where does this leave us? Well, rather than do a review after around about a week or so, I really wanted to use this as my daily driver for a long period of time. And now that I've done that, does this thing really stack up with the best? And is it a smartphone you should be buying? Well, that will all be answered here. The Pixel 2 then. It's a 6-inch smartphone that uses the 18:9 aspect ratio for a sleek, modern looking design. The bezels are definitely slim, but they're not as slim as something like the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus. And that phone just has an overall fit and finish that I think does look and feel a lot better than the Pixel 2 XL. But having said that, there's definitely a big positive to the Pixel's design, and that's the fact that you get dual stereo speakers on the phone itself, as opposed to having that one lonely speaker that you get at the bottom of the S8. But I think it's the screen that's obviously going to be the main talking point for most people. And there's been 3 things really that have been pointed out about the device. And only really, I would say 1.5 of them, to me anyway, have been an issue. The one that hasn't really cropped up for me, and I have tried looking for it, is screen burn-in. That's not to say it's never going to happen, because there's an OLED panel and this sort of thing, while it can be avoided a little bit, I don't think it can be avoided entirely. But there is definitely a blue colour shift to the screen. There's no way around that. I will say that it definitely seems to me to be a lot worse when the device is first turned on from cold, but actually after having used it for a few weeks, it isn't really something I ever notice at all, but it definitely is there, and it's definitely something that rivals from the likes of Samsung, and of course the iPhone X don't really seem to suffer from this at all, and thus they have a better screen as a result. The other thing, and the issue that's sort of half an issue, is to do with the screen saturation and just the way the screen looks. Out of the box, it definitely does look a bit flat. Once again, no way around that. But Google have now patched a extra saturation mode that boosts the colours to the point where actually it really is to my liking, because it's a lot better than it was before, but it's not quite so saturated as Samsung's. But the main thing really is that it's kind of a non-issue in some ways, because it's all about colour gamut and colour space. And while this probably doesn't sound that interesting, essentially what you need to know is that a lot of phones don't actually display P3 properly. They just boost everything up and sort of hope for the best. Whereas what Google were trying to do is use the new version of Android Oreo to properly display native P3 applications on the display properly, giving you a more true-to-life look while still having better saturation levels. But unfortunately what's happened is that most applications don't support P3, which is what made everything sort of look a little bit flat. So this problem will improve over time, but at the moment it's definitely the Google phone that is suffering unless you do activate that saturation mode that sort of brings it more back to normal levels. But basically watch this space. No pun intended. The back of the device uses a 2-tone finish that is classic Pixel. You've got glass for the top third, and then aluminium for the bottom 2/3. I like the design, but there's no wireless charging, which I know it's not going to affect a lot of people, but it's something I'd like to see on my smartphone, as I do feel we're moving towards a wireless future where you could go to any location, put your phone down, and it will just start charging. The fingerprint sensor though is definitely a saving grace for me, as it just works so well. The main problem that I have with the overall design though is actually the fact that there is no headphone jack and no expandable storage. So no SD cards for storing all of those songs, and no headphone jack for, you know, headphones. I have since swapped to wireless headphones, which to be fair definitely have some solid advantages, but running on the train with dead headphones is never very fun, and while you definitely can use the adapter, it's still not ideal. Whether this is going to bother you, again, is going to depend on your individual use case and what you want to use, but personally, I'd still much rather that they'd included the headphone jack, like you'll find on something like the S8 and then the OnePlus 5T. I think we probably should talk about performance though, because this is where this phone really shines, in the usability department and of course in the camera. So this uses the latest version of Android, as you'd expect for a Pixel phone, and you've got a few nifty things as well, like an always listening speaker that can identify songs, which is actually surprisingly accurate and does work offline. You've got a squeeze to activate the Google Assistant feature, which sounds great, but I don't really actually see myself using it that often, but maybe that's just because I use Google Home speakers. But it's all about just the way it feels, because from the moment I got this in my hand and started scrolling around, it's so difficult to describe just how fluid this phone feels. The long and short of it though is that between the Snapdragon 835 processor, the 4GB of RAM, and the software itself, everything I threw at this phone, it just handled it with ease, and it always felt super slick and super stable. Not sure exactly how it all works, but it really does. But I think the thing really that actually has impressed me the most about this phone is actually the camera, because the photos it takes are truly breathtaking. And the reason for this is because pretty much every photo it takes will be HDR. This is on by default. It does this so quickly that it just feels like you're taking a normal photo, and the results are so good as they're really striking the perfect balance between expanding the dynamic range but without looking sort of not very tasteful anymore. And that nicely leads us on to portrait mode, because you see this photo right here, this is probably the first photo I've ever taken on a phone that has really made me stop and sort of question what's possible on a smartphone camera. I'm not saying it can't be improved, because I'm sure we'll see better cameras come out next year, but I really think that this thing is going to do you justice no matter where you take it. The Pixel 2 XL also now has a level of water resistance, which means that if someone chucks you in the swimming pool with your phone in your pocket, you should survive, but it's also got incredibly good battery life. Now, to be clear, I don't always use my phone that much, and I work from home, so if I'm not doing much, I'll finish the day with around about 60–55% battery life, but that's not really very impressive to anyone. What is impressive is the days that I go into London. I do a daily commute and I'm pretty much listening to Bluetooth headphones the entire day, and I've never had to worry about this phone dying, ever. I mean, to be clear, this isn't going to last you 2 days, but I think it would be a very rare occasion that this wouldn't actually last you the entire day. And if you did want to charge up the phone, then it supports the latest quick charge tech as well. So Google claim you get 7 hours and 15 minutes. Whether that's quite accurate, I'm not entirely convinced, but the point being that this is a very battery life friendly phone, which if is something it's going to affect you and you want a phone that has excellent battery life, then you've got to give it to the Pixel. It does a fantastic job. So to conclude then, the Pixel definitely isn't perfect. For one, it's very expensive. It forgoes things like a headphone jack, wireless charging, and of course that expandable storage. And while the screen is definitely improved, it's still not as good as something like an iPhone X or a Galaxy S8. On paper then, perhaps it's not the best choice. But it's not about what it is on paper, it's about what it actually is like to use. And for me and my lifestyle, the Pixel 2 XL is the best Android phone I've ever used. And as long as you can look past those flaws, I actually don't think you're going to be disappointed whatsoever. If you have enjoyed this video, let me know. Hit me up in the comment section down below and hit the like button if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe, as I say, for more videos just like this. And of course, a massive thank you once again to Google for actually getting me this review unit. It's much appreciated. Let me know what videos you want me to cover next, more phones, something different, and I'll catch you in the next one.